That evening, I had spent the entire afternoon preparing for our 40th wedding anniversary. 40 years. 4 decades of marriage to the same man. I had roasted his favorite prime rib, set the table with our best china, and even bought a bottle of the same champagne we had toasted with on our wedding night back in 1984. On the counter sat a beautifully wrapped box containing a vintage Rolex I had saved for months to afford. At 62 years old, running my own bakery for the past 15 years, I knew the value of hard work and patience. I wanted this night to be perfect, a celebration of everything we had built together in our quiet neighborhood in Houston. I glanced at the clock. It was already 7:30. My husband had promised to be home by 6. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. After several rings, he finally answered. The background noise sounded strange, like he was in an enclosed space. "Honey, where are you?" "Dinner's getting cold," I said, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. "Sorry, sweetheart," he replied, his voice slightly breathless. "I'm still at the community center. The board meeting ran late, and now there's a plumbing emergency in the basement. Water everywhere. I need to stay and supervise the repair crew. Don't wait up for me. I'll grab something on the way home." I felt my heart sink a little, but I understood. My husband had been the treasurer of our neighborhood association for years. These things happened. "All right. I love you," I said softly. "Love you too. Happy anniversary, by the way. We'll celebrate properly tomorrow, I promise." After hanging up, I stared at the elaborate dinner slowly going cold. Then a thought struck me. Why not surprise him? I could bring him a slice of the anniversary cake I had baked. He was probably exhausted dealing with that emergency. A little sweetness might lift his spirits. I carefully boxed a generous portion of the red velvet cake, grabbed my car keys, and drove the short distance to the community center. But when I arrived, the parking lot was nearly empty. Only 2 cars were there, and one of them was my husband's silver sedan. The building looked dark, except for a faint glow coming from a small window near the back. Something felt wrong. If there was a plumbing emergency, where were the repair trucks? Where were the other board members? I parked my car and walked quietly toward the building. My heart was pounding as I approached that dimly lit window. I told myself I was being paranoid. 40 years of marriage. He had never given me a reason to doubt him. But when I peered through the dusty glass, my entire world shattered into a million pieces. There was no plumbing emergency, no board meeting. Instead, I saw my husband sitting on an old couch in the storage room, and next to him was a woman. Not just any woman. It was Vivian, our neighbor from 3 houses down. She had moved into the neighborhood just 8 months ago with her husband, a kind retired firefighter named George. Her head was resting on my husband's shoulder, and his arm was wrapped around her waist with a tenderness that made my stomach turn. Then he leaned in and kissed her. A long, lingering kiss that told me this was not the first time. I stood frozen, the cake box trembling in my hands. 40 years. 40 years of trust, of building a life together, of raising 2 children, of sleeping beside him every single night. And this was how he repaid me. On our anniversary, in a dusty storage room with a woman half his age, the pain was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to burst through that door and confront them. But something inside me clicked. A strange, terrifying calm washed over me. Crying and making a scene would only give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. No, if they thought they could play me for a fool, I would show them exactly what this old fool was capable of. I looked around and noticed the heavy padlock hanging on the main door of the storage room. It was unlocked, just hanging there on the latch. A plan formed in my mind. Cold, calculated, perfect. I crept to the door without making a sound. With steady hands, I carefully pushed the heavy metal door closed. The hinges creaked slightly, but they were too absorbed in each other to notice. Then I clicked the padlock shut. The sound echoed in the quiet night like a verdict. I walked to the electrical panel on the side of the building. Without hesitation, I flipped the main breaker. The entire building plunged into darkness. From inside, I heard a muffled scream and my husband's confused shouting. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to George's number. We had exchanged contacts at a neighborhood barbecue last summer. My finger hovered over the call button for just a moment before I pressed it. "Hello? George?" This is Margaret from down the street, I said, forcing panic into my voice. I'm so sorry to bother you this late, but I was driving past the community center and I think I saw some kind of electrical fire near the storage area. Sparks everywhere. I tried calling 911, but my phone keeps cutting out. Could you come take a look? You used to be a firefighter, right? George's voice was immediately alert. Electrical fire? I'm on my way. Don't go near it, Margaret. I'll be there in 5 minutes. I hung up and retreated to the shadow of a large oak tree across the parking lot. Inside the storage room, I could hear them banging on the door, shouting for help. My husband's voice was laced with fear now. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what I was feeling. Within minutes, George's truck pulled into the parking lot. He jumped out with a flashlight and some tools, looking every bit the hero rushing to save the day. He followed the sounds of distress to the storage room door. Hello? Is someone in there? He called out. George, thank goodness. It's me, Harold. The door got jammed somehow and the power went out. Can you break the lock? George examined the padlock with his flashlight. This is an external lock, Harold. Someone locked you in from the outside. That's strange. Hold on, let me get my bolt cutters. He returned moments later and made quick work of the old lock. The door swung open, and his flashlight beam swept across the interior. And then he froze. In the harsh white light, the scene was damning. Vivian was sitting on the couch, her blouse partially unbuttoned, her hair disheveled. My husband stood beside her, his shirt untucked, his face a mask of pure terror. Vivian? George's voice cracked. Harold? What? What is this? No one spoke. The silence was deafening. I chose that moment to step out of the shadows, still holding the cake box. Harold, what's going on? I brought you some anniversary cake, but, oh my goodness, Vivian, why are you here? I played my part perfectly. The confused wife, the innocent victim who had stumbled upon a nightmare. My husband's face went white as a sheet when he saw me. He knew. He knew I had figured out everything. George didn't need any explanation. The evidence was right in front of him. His wife, half undressed, alone with another woman's husband in a dark storage room, his face contorted with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. You, he started, pointing at Vivian. Then he turned to my husband. And you, my neighbor, a man I invited into my home. I trusted you. Vivian burst into tears. George, please, let me explain. But George had heard enough. He grabbed my husband by the collar and landed a solid punch square on his jaw. My husband stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of old chairs. I let the cake box slip from my fingers. I can't, I whispered, clutching my chest dramatically. Then I let my knees buckle and collapsed onto the ground. The commotion shifted immediately. George released my husband and rushed to my side. Margaret! Margaret, are you okay? I kept my eyes closed, my breathing shallow. I could hear Vivian's sobs and my husband's pathetic groaning in the background. Perfect. I had transformed from possible perpetrator into undeniable victim. After a moment, I slowly opened my eyes, feigning confusion. What happened? I saw Harold and Vivian. I let tears stream down my face. 40 years. Today is our 40th anniversary. George helped me to my feet, his expression filled with sympathy. I'm so sorry, Margaret. Let me take you home. These two can find their own way. He walked me to my car, apologizing repeatedly for his wife's behavior, as if any of it was his fault. When we reached my driveway, I touched his arm gently. George, please don't tell anyone about tonight. I'm so ashamed. He nodded solemnly. Whatever you need, Margaret. I'm sorry this happened to you. I went inside, locked the door, and allowed myself one small smile. Act 1 was complete. My husband didn't come home until well past midnight. I heard him creep through the front door like a burglar in his own house. His jaw was swollen and purple. Good. I pretended to be asleep when he peered into the bedroom. He spent the night on the couch. The next morning, I woke up early and made breakfast as if nothing had happened. Scrambled eggs, bacon, fresh squeezed orange juice. When he shuffled into the kitchen, I greeted him with a warm smile. Good morning, sweetheart. How's your jaw? It looks terrible. He stared at me, bewildered by my cheerfulness. Margaret, about last night. Oh, that? I waved my hand dismissively. I've been thinking about it all night. We've been married 40 years. I'm not going to throw that away over one mistake. Vivian is young and pretty. I understand. Men have needs. I forgive you. His jaw dropped. He had clearly prepared himself for screaming, for tears, for threats of divorce. My calm acceptance threw him completely off balance. You forgive me? Of course. We're too old for drama. Let's just move forward. But please, end it with her. Can you do that for me? He nodded vigorously, relief flooding his face. Absolutely. It's over. I swear. I love you, Margaret. Only you. What a liar. But I smiled and kissed his bruised cheek. I know you do. Over the following weeks, I became the perfect wife. I cooked his favorite meals, laughed at his jokes, never questioned his whereabouts. He thought he had gotten away with everything. He thought I was a naive old woman too afraid of being alone to make waves. He was wrong. Behind my sweet facade, I was building a case. I secretly installed a GPS tracker in his car. I cloned his phone to monitor his messages. Every whispered call, every deleted text, every lie he told me was recorded and saved. And the messages between him and Vivian were far worse than I had imagined. I can't wait to be rid of that old hag, he had written to her. Once we sell her bakery and cash out the retirement accounts, we'll have enough to start fresh in Florida. What about George? Vivian had replied. You handle him. Get him to invest in that beach property deal my buddy is running. Once he's in for 50 grand, we'll be golden. Then we disappear together. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to steal everything from both George and me. My bakery that I had built from nothing, my retirement savings, my entire life's work. I felt sick reading those messages. But the sickness quickly transformed into cold, hard resolve. If they wanted to play this game, I would beat them at it. I reached out to George under the pretense of checking on him. We met at a quiet coffee shop on the other side of town. When I showed him the evidence, his face went through a dozen emotions: shock, denial, anger, heartbreak, and finally, steely determination. What do we do? He asked, his voice rough. We give them exactly what they want, I said. We let them think they've won, and then we pull the rug out from under them. George listened as I laid out my plan. It was risky. It would cost us money in the short term. But if we executed it perfectly, we would expose them completely and protect our assets in the process. The beach property scheme was actually a scam. I had done my research. The land was in a flood zone that the county was about to designate as unbuildable. Vivian's contact, who happened to be her cousin, was selling worthless swampland to unsuspecting investors. Instead of warning my husband, I encouraged him. Honey, I said one evening, I've been thinking. We have all this money sitting in savings doing nothing. Maybe we should invest it. You always said you wanted to try real estate. His eyes lit up. Actually, funny you should mention that. I heard about this amazing opportunity. Beachfront property in Florida. The value is going to triple within a year. Really? That sounds wonderful. How much do we need? Well, if we put in $80,000, we could double our retirement fund. I pretended to think about it, then nodded. You know what? You've always been good with money. I trust you. Let's do it. The joy on his face was nauseating. He thought he was so clever. He had no idea he was walking into his own trap. George played his part too. He acted distant and distracted around Vivian, making her think he suspected nothing. When she brought up the investment, he agreed without hesitation. $50,000? Sure, honey. Whatever makes you happy. Within a week, $130,000 had been transferred to the scam account. My husband and Vivian were practically giddy, already planning their escape to Florida. And then, the news broke. The county announced the flood zone designation. The local paper ran a front-page story about the real estate scam that had bilked dozens of investors out of millions. Vivian's cousin was arrested. And just like that, all that money vanished into thin air. I was in the kitchen when my husband came home that day. His face was ashen. His hands were shaking. Margaret, he stammered. The investment. It's gone. All of it. I widened my eyes in horror. What do you mean, gone? It was a scam. The land is worthless. The guy running it got arrested. We lost everything. I covered my mouth with my hand. Oh, Harold, Our retirement, my bakery savings. How could this happen? He couldn't even look me in the eye. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What he didn't know was that I had never actually transferred my money. The $80,000 he thought came from our joint account was actually Vivian's contribution, funneled through a shell company George and I had set up. My savings were safe in a separate account he knew nothing about. The fallout was spectacular. Vivian blamed my husband blamed Vivian. Their grand plan to run away together collapsed as they turned on each other like wounded animals. "You told me it was safe!" Vivian screamed at him when they thought no one was listening. I had the whole thing recorded. "It's not my fault. It was your cousin's scheme. I want my money back. You owe me $60,000. I don't have $60,000. Margaret controls all our finances." Their relationship, built on greed and betrayal, crumbled under the weight of their own deception. But I wasn't finished yet. Armed with months of evidence, including recordings of them planning to defraud us, explicit messages, and documentation of their affair, I filed for divorce. I also filed a criminal complaint for conspiracy to commit fraud. The day my husband was served with divorce papers, he came storming into the bakery where I was frosting cupcakes. "You can't do this," he shouted. 40 years, Margaret. You're just going to throw it all away?" I set down my piping bag and looked at him calmly. "No, Harold, you threw it away. You threw it away every time you kissed her, every time you called me an old hag in your messages, every time you plotted to steal my bakery and leave me with nothing." His face went pale. You read my messages? Every single one. And so will the judge." The divorce proceedings were swift and devastating for him. The judge, after reviewing the evidence of his infidelity, fraud conspiracy, and emotional abuse, awarded me 75% of our marital assets, full ownership of my bakery, and the house. My husband was left with almost nothing. George divorced Vivian as well. She tried to fight for alimony, claiming she had been a devoted wife, but the evidence told a different story. She walked away with the clothes on her back and a mountain of legal fees. As for the criminal charges, my husband and Vivian both faced consequences. The conspiracy to defraud didn't result in prison time since the scheme collapsed before any actual theft occurred, but they were both ordered to pay restitution and perform community service. Their names appeared in the local paper alongside their mugshots. In our small community, that was a punishment worse than jail. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a letter from my ex-husband. He was living in a small apartment on the other side of the city, working part-time at a hardware store. The letter was full of apologies and regrets. He begged for another chance, promised he had changed, swore he would spend the rest of his life making it up to me. I read the letter once, then fed it into the paper shredder at the bakery. Some things cannot be forgiven. Some trust, once broken, can never be repaired. Today, 3 years have passed since that terrible anniversary night. My life has transformed in ways I never expected. The bakery has expanded to 3 locations across Houston. My daughter manages one, my son manages another, and I oversee the flagship store where it all began. George and I remained close friends after everything we went through together. Last year, that friendship blossomed into something more. We were married in a small ceremony at sunset on the beach. Not in Florida, of course. We chose Galveston instead. Sometimes, when I'm kneading dough in the early morning hours before the bakery opens, I think about that night at the community center. The moment I saw my husband through that dusty window. The choice I made not to scream, not to cry, but to think, to plan, to fight. At 65 years old, I have learned that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes strength is the quiet decision to protect yourself. Sometimes it's the patience to wait for the right moment. And sometimes it's the courage to start over, even when the world tells you you're too old for new beginnings. My ex-husband and Vivian, I heard, tried to reconnect after their legal troubles subsided. It lasted about 3 months before they were at each other's throats again. Turns out a relationship built on deception doesn't have much of a foundation once the excitement of betrayal fades. Last week, I saw him at the grocery store. He looked old, tired, defeated. He tried to approach me, but George stepped between us. "She has nothing to say to you," George said firmly. "Move along." And he did. He shuffled away with his basket of frozen dinners and discount bread, a shadow of the man who once thought he could outsmart everyone. I felt no satisfaction in his misery, no joy in his downfall, only peace. The peace that comes from knowing I did what I had to do to protect myself. The peace that comes from surviving the worst betrayal imaginable and coming out stronger on the other side. To anyone listening who might be going through something similar, I want you to know this. You are not too old to start over. You are not too weak to fight back. And you are never, ever obligated to accept betrayal just because you've invested years in a relationship. Trust your instincts, gather your evidence, protect your assets, and when the time is right, make your move. Because the best revenge isn't loud or violent. The best revenge is living well, and that's exactly what I intend to keep doing for whatever years I have left. Did you enjoy this story? I'd love to know which city you're listening from. Leave me a comment below. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can send a super thanks so I can keep bringing you more stories like this one. Thank you so much for listening. I truly appreciate every single one of you. On your screen, you'll see 2 more stories I think you'll love. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next one.